picture of life after the Roxham Road closure. From 2017 until March 2023, specifically the 25th of March, I believe, midnight, so almost a year ago, less the year and a half of the pandemic, over 110,000 people traveled down Roxham Road in the town of Champlain to ask for asylum in Canada. This narrow rural road became famous worldwide as a path to find freedom and economic opportunity. And then, suddenly, with little warning, this passage was shuttered. 6 months later, exactly 6 months later, with great fanfare, the building at Roxham Road, which is right to the side of the heavy equipment, the building was demolished as journalists who had been invited to watch this witnessed heavy equipment crush the metal roof and the walls to the ground. There were many people gathered here, as you can see. I was right across the ditch, the only American there to witness this. It was as if they were saying, voila, we're done with that immigration problem. Officers gone, structure wiped away, problem over. Erased from our memories forever. Except that the people were still on the move, seeking safety, jobs, protection, opportunities for their families, and freedom. Persecutions, starvation, war, drug cartels, hatred for who you are. These circumstances do not disappear when a door closes. People are forced to try another path of travel, and the more they meet roadblocks, the more dangerous the choices become. Refugees have continued to travel north, believing that they will meet one of the conditions that will allow them into Canada. Unfortunately, most often, they are denied, and another door is shut. In addition to those attempting to enter Canada, the number trying to travel from Canada into the United States has increased dramatically. In many cases, a smuggler or a trafficker drops people off near the border and tells them to walk through the fields and the forest covered by snow and ice. Unprepared for the frigid conditions, they are at great risk. In addition, the U.S. Border Patrol, the New York State Troopers, the Clinton County Sheriff's Department, and others are also put in dangerous circumstances as they search for the refugees who have set off the cameras or made a desperate phone call. Both of these groups, northbound or southbound migrants, are detained, processed by American authorities, and are frequently released. Their first stop is usually in the village of Champlain, where we have no services to help them. No taxis, no shelters, few places to eat, and residents who are afraid of them. These residents find people who are hiding in sheds, barns, garages, trying to find warmth. Strangers speaking another language, knocking on doors. Helicopters overhead sweeping back and forth in the winter sky. Law enforcement personnel and vehicles lined up along the streets with bright flashlights illuminating the yards. It can be terrifying for residents and refugees alike. I continue to see all branches of law enforcement working professionally and diligently to keep people safe, but it takes its toll on them as well. I still stock my car with hats, gloves, scarves, and stuffed animals. Any refugee that I meet has already interacted with immigration officers. And my goal is to keep them warm, offer a kind word, and find a ride for them to get to the bus station here in Plattsburgh. Last week, I met a couple from Colombia on the street. The woman was crying and repeating, "Hungry, hungry." I told the trooper who was with them that I would find a ride for them and get them some food. He thanked me and departed. I called the taxi driver, who said he would be there in 20 minutes. I took them a short distance to McDonald's and gave them hats and gloves and some money for food. The woman was looking longingly at a stuffed animal in the trunk of my car. I gave it to her, and she hugged it to her chest, saying, thank you," with tears in her eyes. A few weeks ago, I noticed two young men with a Border Patrol agent right in front of the Champlain meeting house. I walked over to them, offering hats, which they quickly put on. The officer asked if I was able to help them get to Plattsburgh to catch the bus, and I said yes. They had money to pay for the taxi and the bus ticket. The problem being that they couldn't speak enough English to call for the taxi. Once again, I called a driver, and he was soon on his way. One of the men, a young man from Iran, was using his phone to translate Persian into English. Right before he climbed in the taxi, he held his phone out to me and held it out to me so I would read the message. And his message that had been translated said, "I will never forget you," and gave a hug. You know, the work goes on and on and on and on. But for many Americans, the passage of humans from one country to another remains invisible, except on the evening news. And it isn't until you are face to face with an asylum seeker that you see them as very similar to yourself. It's hard to hate someone up close. The quilt of humanity touches us all, with its tiny stitches drawing us to one another, mending tears, darning holes, repairing rips, the blanket which binds us together as humans, fragile fabric, tattered patches, tacked together with threads of love, compassion, and hope. May all of humanity one day find home. Thank you.
Everybody does call us when people slip through the cracks. We do have a county safety, social safety net. We're lucky. You know, the county will put up anyone for one night or till the next business day. It's after hours emergency care, if you will, one time, and then they're told to show up at county social services to see if they're eligible. Well, many people, if you're here on a tourist visa, guess what? You're not eligible for county services. So DSS often calls, CDPH, ER calls on occasion. Sometimes it's through the mental health unit, sometimes it's the ER, because they need a discharge plan. And if the person can't speak the language, has no transportation, we need to arrange taxis and overnight stay usually. So motels have been wonderful that work with us. So they will call local taxi drivers early on. You know, Plattsburgh Cares got started in 2017 because there was a lawsuit. The Attorney General's office sued the various taxi companies that were price gouging. A lot of successes, partnerships with many people, and I don't want to, forget anyone. There's lots of folks, and I just mentioned all of these because we work pretty closely with them. And I was at the food shelf yesterday, and Adele asked, well, where's your money come from? And I said, that's a good question, I'll answer that tomorrow. It's private donations, and we've been lucky to get some grants through the Adirondack Foundation and their Sun Fund on occasion, the Chapel Hill Foundation, recently Stewart's Shops, Catholic Charities, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints made a sizable donation to help us cover our new mission to provide emergency food banks in these hotels, because that's huge. And just churches in general make donations. So, and I'm sure there's other groups too. And our volunteer corps, every 3 weeks or so now, we kind of narrowed our mission. We can't afford bus tickets all over the U.S., but we try to help with local transportation down to New York City. So there is some shelter, at least 30 days or 60 days, at least some shelter. And then we've had volunteers help with all kinds of stuff. Interpretation, navigating school entry, and all of us being a good neighbor and being part of a welcoming community.